Yo everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a review on the latest eyeshadow palette that has been released by Urban Decay, and it is called the Naked Ultimate Basics. Now it's been out for a couple of weeks and it only recently came to the UK, and I personally I bought it from the Urban Decay website. It costs £38.50 and with it you get 12 eyeshadows within a palette. And thank you to one of my Snapchat family who actually gave me a code, so I got a couple of quid off. Hey! Yeah, so this is what the box looks like. It's pretty standard Urban Decay, and it looks like this. This is how the palette looks itself in the typical very sturdy Urban Decay packaging, which we have all come to know and love, with just some kind of designs on the front, nothing spectacular. And inside the actual palette you get a very good mirror. The mirror is decent quality, I have been using it quite a bit. And you've got a double-ended brush, which I haven't used yet. It's got a smudger brush on one end and then it's got a fluffy brush on the other end. I'm just going to leave it in the plastic because, like I said, I've not used it yet. It looks like this. And I'm going to show you the eyeshadows now, bearing in mind I have used this quite a bit since I've got it, so it will look a little bit dirty, so my apologies. Now, as I said, altogether you get 12 eyeshadows. Do I think that £38.50 is worthy of these 12 eyeshadows? I don't. You know what, sometimes I do question Urban Decay's price point when it comes to a lot of their eyeshadow palettes. £38.50 is nearly £40 for 12 eyeshadows. And all of them, bar one, is matte. I mean, there is maybe one or two slight sheens to some of the eyeshadows, but generally I would call them matte eyeshadows. It's just this one here, which is called Blow. Sorry, police going past. This one here that is called Blow, which has got a slight frosty sheen to it, which is great to use on the tear duct as well as the brow bone. Now, what do I think of this eyeshadow palette overall? Do I think it's good? Yes, I do think it's pretty good. Is it excellent? No, it's not excellent. There are a few hit or misses in here. Some of the paler shades will not show up on medium to dark skin tones. Unfortunately, with one or two of them, I have struggled quite a bit. Notably, which one was I using today? This one, Nude. I used it in my crease and I put it on so much, at least 3-4 times, and even then it only just gave a hint of colour, so I had to go in with something else on top to blend it out and make it a little bit more gradient. Same with this shade here, Pregame. I tend to use it all over the lid. It sets, I use it more to set my primer and to set it so that any other eyeshadows I apply on top will apply a lot more or blend a lot more seamlessly. So Pregame as well doesn't really show up that much. On my lid today I'm using, which shade is it again? It's this one here called Commando. You can't really see because I've got glitter on my lid, but I did use this all over the lid. It again just gave a slight tinge of colour, but generally it doesn't really show up that much on my eyelids. What I've been using this entire palette for since I've got it is crease work, definition, that sort of thing. To apply any of these on the lid is a no-no really for me, because I personally like to put something which has got a little bit of shimmer on the eyelid. I don't tend to go for full-on matte looks, especially because firstly it takes a lot longer to blend out matte shades than it does obviously shimmery shades. And a lot of these I just can't apply to the lid because it just doesn't really show up any kind of actual colour. These colours are all too dark to just wear on the lid, so it'll just look a little bit strange. So if you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen me wearing these over the past week or so, and you would have seen that I've used these in the crease to define areas of my eye, and then I've applied something shimmery either by Urban Decay from another palette or like Colourpops. I like their metallic eyeshadows. I apply them on the lid, and then I use this all the way around. This is definitely great for like everyday kind of makeup looks, for those of you that don't like to go for your full-on makeup looks. People that travel a lot as well, makeup artists especially, will benefit from something like this because it is convenient that it's got so many neutral shades in here, neutral matte shades, that, like I said, again, you can go in and work in your crease area quite a lot and then apply something completely different to the lid. So you can create loads and loads and loads of different looks with these. However, for your lid, you would have to generally you would have to use something else. Now, some of these are quite well pigmented, and some of them I've noticed it's quite difficult for my brush to pick it up. It's like that they've been pressed into the pan so firmly that the brush, and I'm using like a fluffy brush like a MAC 224 or my Morphe 330 brush, which I use all the time in the crease, which are very fluffy brushes, but they're still strong enough to pick up any kind of eyeshadow. These ones here, Commando Nude, even Tempted and a little bit of Instinct. It was very difficult to pick up on the brush, so I had to go in backwards and forwards quite a few times to slowly pick up that product onto the actual brush itself, which is slightly annoying. A lot of Urban Decay's eyeshadows in the past have tended to be quite powdery, like in the original Basics palette, the tiny one. They're quite powdery, so you tend to go through them quite quickly. But on the flip side of that, because they're so powdery, so much actually goes onto your brush, and then you are therefore able to apply a lot more easily and quickly on your lid, even though you are losing quite a bit of product because they are quite powdery. It's like the lesser of two evils, if that makes sense. Now with these ones, that I do find them quite difficult to pick up on the brush, and I can even see that from the ones which I've used the most. These ones I've used quite a few times, but it doesn't look like they've been touched that much, and that is because of that exact reason. It's very difficult for my brush to pick them up, so unfortunately not too happy about that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you some swatches. I will mention when I've swatched it a couple of times on each hand, just so that you can kind of get an idea of how it may work for you. In MAC, I am for reference an NC40. I'm going back to NC40 now that my tan is almost faded. And the foundation I'm using is Urban Decay's All Nighter foundation in the shade 6.0. I was initially, and in my review that I did of the foundation, I was using 7.0. That is now too dark and too orange for me. So 6.0 is now going to be my winter foundation, my autumn winter going into spring foundation. And I'll probably go back to 7.0 as I get darker, or probably mix it with my 6.0 to get that perfect match. So that's just to give you guys an idea of the shade of foundation that I use. In the normal naked foundation, I use the shade 7.0, which is perfect. Because the All Nighter foundation oxidizes, you generally have to buy a shade lighter than you normally would do in the naked range. The first shade here is called Blow, and this is a very light peachy beigeish shade, and it has got a bit of pearlescent shimmer to it, so it's perfect to use on the brow bone and the tear duct. And this is probably the only shade that would look amazing on my skin tone on the lid as well. This shade here is called Nudie, and this is a very pale beige shade. I just applied that 3 times to my hand, and you can see that the colour payoff is not that great. It's very difficult to take out of the pan, so this is one shade that I'm not too impressed with. The most I can do with this one is apply it all over my eye just to set my primer, and to apply to make my eyeshadows apply more evenly, because there's a shadow on my lid. This shade here is called Commando, and this is a dark beige shade. This is just one swipe. This one just about shows up in my crease, but this is, as the one I said earlier, I had to apply it quite a lot of times just to get some colour to show up. It would look great on very, very fair skin tones. This shade here is called Tempted. This is like a very taupey, mauvey shade. This one worked fair enough in my crease. Again, the colour was difficult to pick up onto the brush, but once I did get it there, it defined my crease really nicely. It's a nice shade to use as, like, if you don't want a too dark a crease, so very everyday natural sort of look, but without having to have a brown in your crease. This shade here is called Instinct, and this one is a really nice dark mauvey shade. I really like the way that this looked in my crease. I use this in my outer V as well as the crease, depending on what kind of intensity I'm going for, but I found the colour payoff to be quite good. And this shade here on the end is called Lethal. And this one on the end is a deep plum shade. That's 2 swipes I've gone in with. It can be a little bit patchy, and you do have to work quite hard to blend it in. But once you've done that, the colour that, or the look that it comes out with, looks amazing on the eyes. This shade here is called Pregame. And this one is a very pale yellow shade. It is almost invisible on my lid, but I actually prefer this out of the other invisible ones, to pat it down over my primer to almost neutralize my eye. So it does give a little bit of colour. This shade here is called Extra Bitter, and this one is a gorgeous reddish brown. That is just one swipe. This is my favourite shade from the whole palette. It's also, to me, the best performing shade as well. I am using this today. I've used it quite a few times. It's nice to kind of step away from your traditional browns and have something with a little bit more red in it. And this shade here is called Faith. And this one is another one of my favourite shades. It's a very soft medium brown with yellowy undertones, and it has good quality and it blends in really nicely into the crease. This shade here is called Lockout, and this is another very decent brown shade. This one is definitely more cooler toned than Faith. So you've got your warm toned brown and your cool toned one. This one is also slightly darker. This shade here is called Magnet. And this one is a dark grey, and it looks slightly purple in the pan as well. And it's also got slight shimmers in it, but they don't really translate onto the skin. This one I had to go in with 2 swipes because unfortunately it does shear out a little bit, and therefore then apply a little bit unevenly as well. And this last shade here is called Blackjack. And here it is a deep black shade. It's not completely black to me. It seems to have a slight amount of warmth to it as well. And I wasn't too happy with how this blended out. It was quite difficult, but you have to work quite a lot with it to eventually get it to blend out, and then eventually it will look how it's supposed to look. So that's it for the swatches and the review of the swatches. So I think I would give this palette a 7 out of 10. It's not the best kind of palette that Urban Decay have ever come out with, but it's also not the worst. They are coming out with a new palette soon as well, which is like loads of multicoloured bright colours. So when it comes to bright colours, Urban Decay generally tend to do quite well. But this palette, it's okay. It's not terrible. It's not amazing. It's okay. There are definitely a few hits in there and a few misses. This one here, Extra Bitter, I absolutely love this shade. I was surprised that there wasn't a really dark brown in here as well. That's the one thing that I had to like. For example, today, the look that I was going for, I wanted something quite dark in the outer V. So I had to use Lockout and Blackjack together and mix them together to get a really dark brown. So I was a little bit surprised by that, because they could have foregone one of these 3 shades at the top for a dark brown instead. But hey ho, I'm not Urban Decay. So yeah, so I hope that you guys found this video helpful and useful. Whether or not you're going to get it or not, who knows? Let me know what your thoughts are below of this palette. Have you already bought it? Are your thoughts similar to mine? Or am I just making it all up? Or do I just not have a clue? So yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. For reference, I'm wearing Anastasia Beverly Hills Heather's liquid lipstick, and I always link my lipstick below, so please have a look in my info bar, and if I haven't written it in my info bar, then feel free to ask me. Anyway, I hope you guys are great, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.